The ACLU filed a complaint last Friday saying that Riverside County had misused millions of dollars in coronavirus CARES funding by giving that money to the Sheriff's Department that then used that money for renovations. News Channel 3's Peter Dowd spoke with the senior staff attorney at the ACLU's Southern California chapter to find out more about the allegations.
Adriana, first off, tell us more about the complaint that the ACLU filed along with other organizations over the spending that the Riverside County Sheriff's Department did with COVID relief funds.
Absolutely. So that's a complaint that we filed with Riverside All of Us or None and Starting Over Inc. And what we're alleging in the complaint is that Riverside has unlawfully allocated millions of dollars to the Sheriff's Department for renovation of facilities when that money should really be going to helping Riverside community members with the health and economic impacts of the pandemic.
Now, is this unique to Riverside County, or are you seeing this with other law enforcement organizations in Southern California?
Well, we are certainly seeing cities and counties across the state giving law enforcement really more than their fair share, more than what they need to respond to the pandemic. That's not unique. But the degree of unlawfulness here, the fact that Riverside County is on record budgeting for considering the use of these funds before the pandemic and has now come back and reallocated CARES Act funds for these purposes, that's a level of egregiousness that we haven't seen in other places.
At several Board of Supervisors meetings earlier this year, the Sheriff's Department told the supervisors the funds and projects were brought before a CARES committee and determined that they were eligible for CARES funding. So is this complaint geared towards the sheriff, or is it also targeting the CARES committee and Riverside County as a whole?
I think all of these county actors had a role to play. I think that it was inappropriate for the Sheriff's Department to be asking for these funds in the first place. But of course, the county representatives, the county board of supervisors, the CARES committee, they had a responsibility to hold the Sheriff's Department accountable and to make sure these funds were going to an appropriate place, and they didn't do that.
And they didn't do that, you're saying. The sheriff said in a statement last week that the complaint is, quote, misleading and misinformed, and call it anti-law enforcement rhetoric. Your response?
You know, what we are looking at here is whether these funds are going to pandemic response. That's really at the heart of this. Is it going to address the suffering and the needs of Riverside community members? And to make it about anything else, I think, is just politicking in a cynical way.
Any final thoughts on this? And overall, do you believe that Riverside County has properly used its CARE funds to mitigate the effects of the pandemic?
I think it's quite clear that this use of funds was not proper, and that these millions of dollars could have gone to much better use addressing vaccine education, vaccine access, and getting people into safe housing and relieving the real economic impacts of the pandemic.
All right. Adriana, we appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Sheriff Chad Bianco had responded to the filing of that complaint last week, saying in part that the County of Riverside had an exhausting process for distribution of CARES Act funding, and I am completely confident the process ensured the county operated within federal government guidelines.